You there? You hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you see me?
Unfortunately.
I know. I hear you. It ain't gonna get any prettier.
I feel like I'm being interviewed by George Clooney.
Oh, stop it some more. I'll take that. I'll take it. I appreciate you changing the scenery. Right.
Yeah. Sorry I don't have a better studio for this, but
No, no,
this
you're perfect. Do you have earphones by chance? And would it be possible to use them? If not, no worries. I don't know if they'll work with the laptop or the computer or the phone, whatever you're using.
how's that?
Oh yeah, I think that's good. That
Right.
works. All right. Let me just take one more. Oh, that we're both doing it at the same time? Yeah. Just one second. All
We're
right.
brothers.
Yes,
We're
sir, we
brothers,
are.
Yochai.
All right. I'm gonna get this start. I have a little bit of an intro and we'll see what happens. This is just practice for me. Like I said, only one guy's gonna see it, and I appreciate you doing this, brother.
Have you done this before?
Yes, I've been doing practice interviews since October. And
Okay. October?
oh yeah, I've been working with him since October. Yeah. Yeah. The first few were disastrous. This is
I
just
can
gonna be
see that.
this is just gonna be a half disaster.
Okay.
Like my yoga practice. It started off as a complete disaster and now it's just a half disaster.
Hey, honestly, brother, you're if nothing else, you are persistent.
I'll take it. All right, let's get this started. All right, here we go. This thing on? All right. Welcome to Yakin with Yochai. Today we have Dr. Jeff Beaudoin, a dedicated yoga teacher with over 6,000 teaching hours. His transformative Zyre Yoga program combines power yoga and calisthenics for physical strength and mental calm. With a background in natural health and psychology, Jeff brings a unique perspective to his teachings. Let's explore the transformative power of yoga with the incredible Jeff Beaudoin. Thank you, and how are you, good sir?
Good. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Likewise, I really appreciate you coming on the show with me. It's been a while. We reconnected recently, and it's just really it, you've been an inspiration to me, whether you know it or not, in terms of my teachings. Because I don't know if you remember many years ago in Santa Monica, you were telling me, Yochai, doesn't matter, just go out and teach. Find anybody, teach your friends, teach your enemies, teach anybody. And that really inspired me to just put in the hours and putting the hours and putting the hours. And I mean, I think I'm even rating the 6,000 plus hours because that figures from a bunch of years ago. I mean, we must be getting to that 10K mark. What does that say? Yeah, that outlier, the perfection. Everything becomes amazing at 10,000 hours. Is that I don't know if you've heard that.
Something like that, yeah, something like that. But I'm proud of you for doing that. It's not easy, but I truly believe that that's the only way to do it. And sometimes my current, I'm appreciate the reminder because in my current life, I've sort of transitioned out of teaching yoga into. I realized at the age of about 51 that I have an artistic ability that was latent, and now I'm a full time artist, and I still practice yoga, but I'm struggling with putting my stuff out there because I'm insecure about it. And maybe I should, well, not maybe, I definitely need to apply that same principle to what I'm doing as an artist now and just put it out there and put it in front of people. But that was the way I taught myself how to teach yoga, was just to start, taking all comers and let hoping that they'll let me practice on them, and it worked out, and I'm glad it's worked out for you as well.
It really has. I mean, and an artist, I mean, that also I'm assuming there's a yogic principle when it comes to art. Focus, a breath. There's a meditative aspect, from what I understand.
Yeah, repetition, repeating the same. I'm a pattern artist, and a lot of my art has become sort of manifestations of my dreams and experiences that I've had in yogic states, and from doing a lot of holotropic breathing. I have these visions, and I bring those visions into my art. But there's a lot of the same principles. I don't think the art wouldn't have come through me if it wasn't for yoga and meditation practice. And I'm also being a veteran. and having PTSD, as you're aware, and experience, we've both experienced quite a few traumas. I got recently involved in psychedelic therapies, and that's manifesting in my artwork as well. But a lot of the same principles. It's a meditative discipline.
I absolutely agree with you about the yoga. My grandmother was an artist. Now you mentioned holotropic. Is that the word that I heard before? Holotropic.
Holotropic breathing, right?
What, what is that?
Have you heard of Wim Hof?
Of course, yes.
Okay, so Stanislav Grof, who was one of the founders, or I guess he coined the term transpersonal psychology.
Now, Wim Hof is just a breath teacher out there in the sphere of influence of breathing. Is this person their teacher or just a colleague alongside him?
You know, I don't know if anybody can claim anybody a specific teacher in the world of. I don't know who's Wim Hof's teacher particularly. I haven't seen that he's claimed anybody, but I do know that the breathwork world is, yoga is pranayama, it's in pratyahara, the same practices. So I consider breathwork very much a part of my yoga practice, but I don't know who Wim Hof studied under, but I do know Stanislav Grof coined the term holotropic breathing. He was a student of Carl Jung, and Stanislav Grof was big into LSD back in the late 60s, and then the Nixon administration made it illegal. So Stanislav Grof found through certain yogic breathing techniques that you could achieve a very similar, he claimed a very similar higher state, altered state of consciousness. And I found it to be certainly true that you can achieve a higher state of consciousness, or who's to say what's higher or lower, but altered and beautiful state of consciousness, similar to taking psychedelic drugs. And I don't like the term drugs, psychedelic medicines, plant medicines. So it's Wim Hof has really distilled it down into a very basic practice of 30 deep inhales and exhales, and then an exhale hold for anywhere from a minute to 3 minutes, and then repeating that process.
One of the things that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
No, well, one of the things that you mentioned, an exhale, and to me, my breath changed, and I don't know where I picked this up from, but that the emphasis is so on the exhale, and it's almost counterintuitive when you think about it, because as the exhale happens, we're really flexing that diaphragm, we're really flexing that muscle to push all the air out. The inhale comes naturally, and I think a lot of people, and I don't know maybe I even got it from you or Wim Hof or other people in my time, but that as soon as I placed the emphasis on the exhale, my inhale, the following inhale, deepened.
Yeah, you may have gotten that from me. That's one of the things I used to teach a lot, because the exhale is associated with surrender and letting go. And the deeper your exhale, the mind is always clinging to being alive, so physiologically your central nervous system wants to be alive. So if you exhale fully, your body's automatically going to want to inhale even deeper.
Now you mentioned your military service. First of all, thank you for your service. You also mentioned PTSD, and I've done.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm serious.
I am too. I've learned to say that, because the sacrifice is gone. I've been out for 30 years. This year I've been out of the military, and I'm still dealing with a lot of the effects of being in the service. And when people say thank you for your service, I definitely say you're welcome now, because it wasn't just those 4 years. I've paid dearly with I've sacrificed dearly, and a lot of veterans, most veterans sacrifice more than the average person realizes. So
absolutely. And I agree with you. And that's what led me to work with that at-risk population. But before I get to that, because there's a little interstitial I wanted to put in, is that what influenced your Zyre Yoga program? Because it really combines that the power yoga with that classic military calisthenics. Is that what brought to you, that your fitness background with your service to try to work out through our problems physically through asana posture? And how does that transform the PTSD? I mean, was that helpful for you? Is that how Zyre Yoga program came to be?
Yes.
So, I mean, so what? I mean, what inspired you? Like, it was just military service in your evolution. Is it dealing with your own self?
I just naturally gravitated towards, I wouldn't say more difficult asana practices, because Zyre Yoga is definitely not something that anybody would consider. I never incorporate any advanced advanced poses, quote unquote advanced poses, because most of those are pointless anyways. But the what inspired me to create Zyre Yoga, or how that evolved, was just my affinity for military style body weight calisthenics done in a very yogic manner. Like plank, down dog, and these are all basic postures, basic movements, and then done correctly and repetitiously with deep, intense focus. It's very basic, but I've learned that that type of practice really helped me in a lot of respects. Now, life threw some curveballs at me since then, as you're aware, but I don't think I could have survived those curveballs and those traumas had it not been for my practice. And to answer your question more straightforward, these are good questions, Yochai, because I haven't thought about this in a while, and I've just recently gotten back into my practice deeper. I haven't stopped practicing, but my practices the last couple of days have been very much more along the lines of what I was teaching when I filmed that series. And I think that type of practice was designed to take you to a place of you've kind of got to go to that edge of where because yoga is concentration, right? Yoga, ultimately, the sutras, the limbs, everything that Patanjali taught, it can all be distilled down into concentration. And
And
the
Patanjali was
physical
the guy that he was the guy that wrote down the Yoga Sutras to about 2,000
right.
years ago. Yeah.
Actually, I think they found it was like 4,000 years ago. It was
Oh,
2008 BC, from what I understand. But
okay.
um, it can all be
Yeah.
broken down into concentration. So my own practice and my own teachings, I tried to teach a class that's not only physically balanced but mentally challenging enough, and I tried to teach in such a manner to engage the person fully in the present moment. Now, that's not easy, but that was the goal.
Well,
So
you always emphasize building that physical strength and mental equanimity. I mean, when I've ever taken your classes, you've gotten me into positions due to the sequencing that I felt was very effective. And I really, I mean, out of all the classes I take, I do remember yours getting me into frog pose, which is like huge hip opener, ridiculous for me, but I got into it deeper than I ever had. And I was feeling good, not suffering through it, not pushing myself, almost finding that mental equanimity, building that strength that I needed. And
yeah, good.
I always liked those sequences that you had.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback, and that was the whole point, is to really basic, logical. But to me, the whole practice is a warm up, right? Yogasana, yoga practices are supposed to be a warm up for shavasana. So if I would always approach every sequence and every pose and every transition is just part of the warm up. The beginning and the middle and the end is all a warm up. So um, part of that is just naturally being able to get into uh, postures like hip openers, shoulder openers, whatever, logically and safely. So I'm glad
How
that
do
helped.
yeah, it did. Well, I mean, how do you strike that balance between challenging students and creating a peaceful practice? You know, it all leads up to Shavasana corpse pose when we do let go, when we have that almost like microcosm of life, but building up to get there is that challenge. You know, is there a pace? Do you have a flow? Is it depending on the body area that we want to deal with?
I mean, I just tell what I practice. So when I practice, like for example, today, my practice, you know, I pay attention to how my body's feeling energetically, if I'm tight in certain areas, if I'm loose, where, you know, if I've got a high energy day, I'll usually do a slower practice to balance. I'm always seeking balance. So how does that translate over to my teachings? I was just always, I guess, a little bit surprised that it translated as well as it did. But you know, I taught a lot of people to teach yoga, and I just remember always telling people, you know, you have to have a very, very strong, dedicated, tapas oriented practice, and then pay attention to what you're teaching and what you're feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, and then incorporate that into your teaching. So my sequencing, my what I taught philosophically in terms of breath work, in terms of alignment, sequencing, all that just comes from my own practice. And you know, you could read every book under the sun until you're blue in the face and you're broke, and take all the classes in the world. And that's why I told you back in the day, like, just start teaching people. But more importantly, practice yoga a lot, and make sure that you're doing it in such a manner as to take care of yourself and to make yourself feel good, and have the right intentions. Because yoga, to me, the physical practice is just about making yourself feel good physically.
Right.
It's not about the physical practice. I don't think is ever, anybody who claims that they achieve some sort of state of enlightenment or transcendence from the physical practice is blowing smoke up your ass, because I don't really believe that's possible. I do believe it's possible through the other aspects of yoga, the philosophy, the deep breath work, meditation, the concentration.
Well, you've learned about
Um,
a lot of those subjects. I mean, you have a reputation of being what is it, a pantologist? You know, liking a lot of diverse topics. Um, does this
yeah,
thirst for knowledge shape your own personal spiritual growth and teaching style? I mean, is that where you get that nice little balance? Is that how you achieve it? You get balance through the consumption of as much sources, as much information, as much knowledge as possible.
for sure. I think that that benefits our whole life, teaching, learning. For me, I just have an interest in different subjects. Like that's how I went from, you know, teaching yoga and kind of getting out of that into, you know, pattern design and sort of psychedelic art now.
Well,
Um,
I'd like to leave that till the end and bring it back to full circle. Before we get to that, you know, look, you have a doctorate degree in natural health focused on transpersonal, what is it, transpersonal studies, I believe.
yes, sir.
How does this background inform your own yoga practice? I mean, did the yoga come first and then you went into this, or did this coming alongside yoga? Is this part of the being a pantologist? You know, what is the connection between all those?
You know, I studied transpersonal studies academically, and I finished my doctorate degree in that field before I ever started practicing. And I took a yoga class in 1999 at One Yoga in Scottsdale, Arizona. And the first class I took, my teacher, Aaron King, had said a couple things philosophically that I'm like, that's right. That's like transpersonal psychology, which, by the way, transpersonal psychology is just basically Eastern philosophy put in the context of Western psychology. But I noticed that
Can you
there,
give us an example of that? Like, is it
well, for
it's a reframing? You mean?
sure, sure. Well, think about, here's one of my favorite principles in all of spirituality, and one of the things that really helps me center myself. It's not easy to get, but think about the fact that anything, you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're not your possessions, you're not your image, you're not even your memories, you're not your traumas, you're not your successes or failures. What you are fundamentally is that which is aware of all those things, because a subject cannot be an object at the same time. An object cannot be a subject. So if you are aware of something, like for example, Yochai, that's just your name. Your body is, it's something you're aware of. Um, your car, but people identify with these things. You get identified, and that's the ego structures part of that. You the human tendency to identify with, my name is Jeff Beaudoin, and I from Omaha, Nebraska, and I own a Subaru, and I have a doctorate degree, and I've lived in all these places, and this is my job, and blah, blah. That's identity. What we have to remember, what yoga teaches and transpersonal psychology teaches and Eastern philosophy teaches, is that you are the observer of that. You are that which is aware of that. And it goes so many layers deep, because it's so hard to break out of identity, that sometimes we'll even get the sense that, oh, I'm just the observer. Well, who's aware of that? Like, I had an experience of recently that I would consider very much an ego death experience. And this was during breath work and combined with psilocybin, a high dose of psilocybin. And I couldn't have told you what my name, where I'm at. Uh, I completely lost sense of time. So I lost my foundation of identity, but I was aware enough to realize that there was somebody or something that was aware of that. So that's fundamentally what, according to transpersonal psychology and Eastern mysticism and all the great traditions, that's what you are fundamentally. And to me, that's what yoga is about. I think we've forgotten that in the West, but it was just to answer your question in a very long way. It it dovetailed with my academic interests and pursuits. And now, since I've left teaching, since the death of my son, and life has kind of brought me back around to being an artist, now I'm finding myself wanting to go back to teaching, but I think I'll probably go back to teaching more from a shamanic hermeticism perspective. If I teach asana at all, it will probably be more like yin yoga, and I will be bringing the principles that I just talked about. Is like, anything you can become aware of is not what you are, it's just what you're aware of. That's
And
what you are, as the observer.
and thank you for sharing all that. So just to contrast yin yoga versus the power yoga, you're very, that very athletic, very strength thing. How would you compare, just, just a brief kind of thing about, is yin yoga? I mean, I've practiced it, but I don't know if it was a legit yin teacher, but it's these long holds where you're really focused on that letting go and getting into the body for that. Is that what you mean by yin?
Well, yeah, Paul Greeley created the term yin yoga, and yin just means female energy, and it's more of a passive,
Oh, in contrast to the
receptive.
yang. In contrast to
Yeah,
the yang. Yeah.
it's right. So it's a passive, receptive. You're trying to open up your body. You're not trying to strengthen anything. You're trying to open up and release tension. So yin yoga is pretty much 99% just on the ground in long, deep stretch holds. Power yoga, as you know, both of our we both studied to some degree under Brian Cast
Yes.
and Rudy Mattia. And power yoga, as Brian said, is just any yoga that's empowering. But he studied under Patabi Joyce, who created Ashtanga yoga, which is a very intense, dogmatic form of physical yoga, almost on the border of abusive. It can be argued it's abusive yoga, and that's why Brian created power yoga. So, but Brian also teaches yin yoga, and he turned me on to yin yoga. What I'm trying to do with my own practice is I try to bring a yoga, sort of a yin quality into power yoga.
Oh,
So
that's
if
interesting.
if you can bring a yin sort of surrendering, opening mindset and breath work into uh, standing poses and more physical poses, I think that strikes a nice balance for me. So that's the contrast, and that's what I'm trying to do now. And if I do go back to teaching, that's what I'm going to teach.
Well, I think I mean, you have such a, yeah, you have vast, I mean, 2 decades plus of experience. And in one of your classes, you start off with it, and I really like this quote. It's like, the good news is that the past is dead. And, how do you feel? I mean, well, I like it because, I mean, it's almost like a, there it is. It's like, of course, but, phrased in a particular way. How do you feel a yoga practice can help individuals let go of the past and move forward in their lives?
I got to tell you, the irony of that class. Now that class has got, of course, they posted that class, and I think it's got 32,000 views, and it's just there to remind me of where I was at in my life. And I think yoga can be very dangerous if you're not signing up for personal transformation. So um, I met my son's mother. I mean, I met her through yoga, and we had just started dating during the filming of that class. And then, long story short, we had Kane, and then Kane suffered and died. And through that trauma, I have struggled with practicing that very principle for the last 8 years since his passing. The good news, the past is dead. It's like the universe said, "Oh yeah, you've got a big mouth."
Well, I mean, I think
You
it's
know,
you've transformed yourself, into your art right now. I mean, that's a life transformation. And
sure, I
I'm not
still.
trying to. I don't want to lessen what happened 8 years ago, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And I appreciate you sharing it with us.
No,
Um,
my point is that that's much easier said than done. And I think real yoga practice, real the deeper stuff, like, letting go of the past, or forgiving yourself, or learning to love yourself. These are really, really not easy things. And they should not be taken lightly. It's very, very difficult to let go of the past. Now, I agree. The good news is the past is dead, and let it go. Tell your mind that, especially if you've been traumatized, and I believe you might be able to relate to that, as
absolutely, absolutely.
can so many, unfortunately, billions of people can relate to being traumatized, and your mind gets stuck in these loops. Um,
How
so
has
yeah, I
art?
mean,
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I totally agree with that. I mean, metaphysically, we know the past is dead, but yoga does help you. The more you can be in the present moment, because, as you know, the body is always in the present moment. The breath is always in the present moment. Sensations that you're feeling in your body are always in the present moment. So yoga asks you to pay attention to what you're feeling in your body, the sound of the movement, and the feeling of your breath. You know, those sensations, that's vipassana. So to the degree to which you can pay attention to those things, you're going to be more present. And then by definition, you literally cannot think about the past and be present at the same time. If
Well,
you're thinking about the
yeah.
past, you're not present. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, that's almost leads me back full circle to how we started with this new found love for art. That, from what I understand, I mean, my grandmother was an artist. She was also a sculptor. There's nothing more in the moment. I mean, I went to some of the sculpting classes with her, and I'm banging on rocks. When I'm banging on that rock, there's my mind in the rock, just as her mind was in her sculpting clay, especially when she got older and she couldn't bang on a rock a lot, or painting, whether it was acrylic, water paints, oil. In our last few minutes, I mean, art is very immediate. You're in there. How did you come about to this art? How is it helping you therapeutically? How maybe it helps others?
Yeah. So after my son passed, I was looking for just a way to. I guess you call it in hindsight art therapy. You know, I started studying sacred geometry through. I got another degree. I've got a second master's degree in
Oh,
biomimicry
wow.
design, and then through that degree, I studied the mathematical principles in nature, which includes, you know, phi, square root of phi, square root of five, and all these same geometric principles are found throughout nature and they make up nature. So I studied those and I learned how to do three-dimensional sacred geometry by hand. I just found it very therapeutic, meditative. It just brought me into the present moment. Now it's just kind of evolved into past three-dimensional into psychedelic, I'd say, art. And it just came out of necessity. I guess you'd call it art therapy, but it's very much just healing for me. And now I do it 4 or 5 hours a day. I work on my art,
Wow, man.
at
You, you,
least.
you're chasing another 10,000 hours.
I am
Yeah.
very
Well,
much.
I hope you get there, and don't let me take you away from adding more hours to that. This has been incredibly informative, and I really appreciate your time, and it's good to reconnect, and I appreciate you coming on the show. So yeah, that's an amazing journey of focus in a lot of different mediums. I appreciate your input on all of that, Jeff. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you interviewing me, and it's always a pleasure, Yochai. And I'm a big believer in you and your energy and what you can do in this world. So thank you for making me a part of it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And to you, the listener, thank you for staying on and listening to Yakin with Yochai, brought to you by Forget About It Auto Body out of Forest Hills, Queens, New York. Good night.